I'm Heidi. This is the overview of what I'm going to be talking about today, which is essentially about the evolving digital landscape and how technology is fragmenting and enhancing the targeted engagement opportunities. So before I get really stuck in, I'll tell you a little bit about who I am, what MEERKATworks is, the evolution of the digital landscape, and the impact of the digital revolution, and what the new opportunities are. So, in 1995, I got on a truck in Cockermouth in Cumbria and I went to London to find my fortune. I literally hitched a ride. I went to find a job. I didn't really get a job at first. I started to DJ techno and alarm club nights in Brixton, where I lived, set up street children projects for Colombian street children where I lived. And then I got a job. And I got a job in 1995 selling advertising space in what I can only describe as the most boring publication ever. It's like the Yellow Pages. My job was to sell advertising to IFAs, so it really wasn't cutting edge of boring. So I moved on and I went to radio, which was brilliant. I worked in radio in London. I worked in Hiss and Magic Studios. I loved it. I worked there until 2005, and then I had a light bulb moment. It was in the summer of 2005, and I was lying at home sick. I was actually off sick. I'm not really a sick person, but I was off sick that day. And I just thought, what am I doing? Why am I working for this big company? I'm getting bored again. So I decided that I would set up MEERKATworks. So what is MEERKATworks? MEERKATworks is an independent advertising agency that is nearly 20 years old. I've got my colleague in the back here, Casey, and we specialise in planning and buying advertising across TV, digital, audio, outdoor and print, and we are 100% independent. So in terms of just a little bit about us, is our MEERKAT lineup. So we are independent thinkers. We are not tied to any one media owner in the UK. It's important to stress that. We're very curious and contagious. We're creative, we're natural collaborators, very agile, and we're very determined as well, which is kind of why we're here after lockdown. All of these elements of what makes us has helped us get through the last 20 years. So, why am I here? Well, I'm here because I know my earnings. After 20 years, I would hope I would. And I'm going to tell you a little bit. Before I get stuck into the actual media itself, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey through the last 20 years or so in terms of what's happened in the world of digital. So, in the beginning, there was traditional media. There was print first, there was radio, TV, and out of home. And these are all still very much media that we buy, non-digital. It's very important to point that out. It's not all about digital nowadays. There's still some very brilliant ways of advertising traditionally. So digital started to arrive, but when did it all begin? So this is a very interesting journey for me, looking back at where did it all begin. And the first email marketing campaign was when I was 8 years old. I'm just going to give away how old I am now. Work that out for yourselves. In 1978, the first email marketing campaign. And then in 1989, the World Wide Web was born. And then the term digital marketing started to appear in the early 1990s. And this is the first ever clickable web banner that appeared. And it was in 1994 that came out. And the click-through rate was, hold on to yourselves here, 44%. The guy who created that is actually still on LinkedIn. And he reckons that for 4 months he had a click-through rate of 44%. Casey, the average industry now is?
0.08%.
There you go. Just to show you. Just give some concept. So, we're in 1995. Over the 5 years between 1995 and 2000, things started to gather pace. There was the dot-com boom. Google was founded in 1997. And then in the year 2000, Sky introduced interactive TV advertising, red button stuff. You can pause an ad, click on it. Email marketing started to take off. I'm sure you all recognise MailChimp. And AdWords was formed. LinkedIn came out in 2003. It introduced advertising in 2005. Then Facebook was born in 2004. So looking at 2005 onwards, which is when Meerkat was actually born, the website started to grow. And as the website started to grow, ad networks started to appear. I don't know how many of you, have any of you heard of ad networks? Do you want to teach any of you subjects? So ad networks are run by people, ad exchanges are run by machines. And the ad networks were initially set up so that they could go to publishers and say, why don't you give us your space and we'll sell it for you? So they started to be able to sell networks. So along that time, YouTube was born. Again, imagine a world without YouTube. And they introduced advertising in 2007. Twitter was born in 2006. And they introduced advertising in 2010. And then it started to, for me personally, as an expert media plan buyer, this is when I started to notice that there was a bit of a shift. An ITV player came out. We're not dealing in first-party data at this stage. I must stress that. It was programming-led. And Spotify was the big one. For me, as a media planner buyer, this was the big one. Because suddenly, you could stream whatever music you wanted on your phone, and advertisers could reach you. So at this point, no one in Global or EMAP, who run all the big radio stations, none of them have even entertained the idea of advertising to people on mobile apps. This is a significant point. And then in 2009, programmatic started to take off, which I'll go into shortly. And it started to take off because of real-time bidding. So suddenly, you can start to target people in real time, the here and the now. Not ahead of yourself, but the here and the now. So 2011, Absolute launches on a phone. And I remember the moment the rep came down from EMA and sat in my office and said, you can listen to Absolute for free on your phone, but you'll have to tell them how old you are. You'll have to tell them that you're a woman. I remember that moment. And I said to him, but why do I have to give them that information? And it's so they can target me. So this was a very, very key year when audio advertising was introduced. And they started to introduce audio advertising on phones as well for the likes of Magic and Kiss, Absolute 80s. This is another key milestone. In 2010, Instagram was born. And adverts were introduced in 2013. And then it started to really kick off quite big time. AdSmart in 2014. DAX, do any of you know or familiar with DAX in here? Okay, I'll come on to that. 2015, ITV Hub, which is a much more sophisticated version of the player. And then in 2019, InStream, which is the Kiss and Magics, launched their own version of digital audio. Channel 4 started to digitise their offering. TikTok was born. I'm not TikTok, but I had no idea that TikTok was so late in the game. And then in 2022, ITVX relaunched. So, what's the impact of this? So, from my perspective, what's happening throughout my 20 years of media planning and buying is the cherry, for want of a better expression, there was that traditional media, which we focus on. We are not meta experts at Meerkat. But that cherry, to get a bite of that cherry, suddenly we're having to deal with clients who basically spending money elsewhere as well as on the traditional forms of media. The first massive shift was from print to digital. And this is just an example of how many newspapers we used to have to speak to. I can't begin to describe to you my typical day 10 years ago, more than that actually, trading, and that was the word, trading space in newspapers and magazines. It was just immense. We probably have 10 people come down a month from newspapers and magazines to talk to us. And to give some context, I spoke to somebody about this. Back in 2010, there were 120 people on the sales force in the Daily Mail, just selling space in their newspapers. There's 8 now. That's how big a shift there's been. So, I don't know how many of you remember the London Light. Do you remember this? Free paper. It used to be distributed in the afternoon, just before the Evening Standard. And this is a client that we won back in the early days for Star Wars Celebration Europe. And we had to book, so we won Star Wars in October 2006. And the event took place in July 2007. We booked this advert on the front cover of this newspaper in February 2007. That's how far ahead you had to book to get some space in a newspaper back in the day. And then in 2015, things started to slow down. There was a palpable shift. I started to feel it. I don't think there was one specific moment, but I started to get a sense that things were changing. And to understand this, we need to look at why. So, to go back to the 90s, when I travelled to London on the truck, there was a publisher and there was an advertiser. The ad networks followed, and the ad exchanges started around the mid-noughties. Real-time bidding came in, programmatic started to build momentum, and then this is the big year for programmatic. The national newspapers in this country, The Guardian was the first, they started to sell their inventory to the ad exchanges. So suddenly a sales force of people who were selling their product to someone like me or Casey, they start to sell the inventory to an ad exchange. And this is a really defining moment for the world of national newspapers and magazines in the UK. Because by 2018, 2019, programmatic has become the dominant force in the UK for display. So, programmatic is starting to fire. It's 2020, we get locked down. AI is starting to take off, machine learning. And I decided to do a PhD in programmatic, which I actually do believe saved my business. If I rewind back to the beginning of lockdown, as a business, we lost everything. Everything cancelled in March 2020. And it wasn't because we were dependent upon one sector or one client. It was because every single client we had was to do with footfall. People leaving the house. So the programmatic is something I learned, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it is. And you'll all have been exposed to it. Does anyone in this room know anyone who doesn't browse? It's not a trick question. Anybody know who doesn't browse? No? So programmatic reaches people whilst they browse. It's as simple as that. So whilst you're browsing, whatever you're doing on your daily journey, we will all have our own different journeys. There will not be one of us in this room, I bet, who has the same journey today as they had yesterday when they browsed. I'd put money on it. So programmatic reaches people as they browse. It's smart, it's fast, and it's very, very efficient way of targeting people as they browse. And it uses data and automation to deliver adverts to the right people in the right place at the right time. So just hold that thought. And I'm sure all of you, as you browse, will see adverts. And probably all of you will have an experience of where you see the adverts too many times. You get sick of them, you start to block them, it puts you off a brand. Our job at MEERKAT is to make sure that that does not happen, that we get the frequency just right. So in terms of the control, it's a bit like a mixing desk, that's what I was described as. And it's important to point out, Casey and I in MEERKAT, we are not the ad ops team. We have an ad ops team that do this for us. They sit in very dark rooms and they don't tend to come out in the daytime. So I'm going to show you two different case studies. One is for Tennessee and one is for our friends at the back, Lightning Fibre. So Lightning Fibre first up. The beauty of what we have done with Lightning Fibre is we have taken a brilliant model with everything sorted at the bottom of the funnel in terms of SEO, PPC, great website, brilliant offering, call centre. It's all set up. But it's a Lightning Fibre, it's a broadband client. So they want to reach people who are in market in the right areas that they're digging. Is that fair to say, Rob? Right areas where you are to be able to get Lightning Fibre broadband. Because what Rob and his team don't want to do is to advertise to people who can't get lightning fibre. There's no point. So Rob gives us postcodes in Sussex where lightning fibre either exists or lightning fibre is coming. It targets anyone in market for broadband, and we are doing standard IAB and pre-roll YouTube. So by that, what I'm talking about is standard display. So you'll see adverts like this. Have any of you seen lightning fibre adverts? Did you browse? Okay, where do you live?
I live on the South Downs in Sussex.
Yeah, so this is the brilliant thing about programmatic. Lightning fibre does not want to speak to people who can't get lightning fibre. In the olden days, if Rob had come to us with the same brief, we'd have to scratch our heads and think, well, okay, you're going to have to go across East Sussex, but unfortunately everything that we do is going to be based on where the mast sends us. So apart from some local press, you'll get a certain amount of wastage. This ensures that there's not a lot of wastage at all. In fact, there's no wastage theoretically, because anybody looking at the advert, whilst we can't 100% guarantee that they're in market to change their contract, we do know that they're showing a behaviour someone has written broadband. So as you can see here, Rob's at the back. Rob, I think you're happy with the programmatic?
Very. Yeah, programmatic's been great.
And it's the great thing about the programmatic piece is that it should always be on. And to go back to talking about who we are and what we are independent. So as media experts, we're not here to push programmatic to anyone. But in terms of cost-effective marketing, and being able to reach people when they're doing something on a daily basis, it's this that people should be doing on a daily basis and not switch it on and off, because nobody switches browsing on and off. So just hold that thought. This is Tennessee. So we have a lot of different clients from America who promote their destinations. And towards the end of lockdown, when America opened up, they approached us and they said, we want to target anyone who we think might want to go to Tennessee, all over the UK. So we targeted the whole of the UK. And in terms of audience, we went after lookers. So I saw this advert when I was in Scotland, and I hadn't actually looked at flights to Tennessee, but I showed the behaviour of someone who might like things that are in Tennessee. So I love the great outdoors. I love food, I like drink. I'm not massively into the music over there, but that doesn't matter because I was showing a lot of the behaviour of someone who wants to go to Tennessee. And what will also come into play is that I will be getting the ticket of being an ABC1 middle-aged woman. So this worked brilliantly for them because we did a combination of high-impact banners, pre-roll and YouTube. So we've got this brilliant video Tennessee, which we showed. We did this, hopefully you can see this. So this is what you call a high-impact carousel. So it moves, it doesn't make a noise, but it moves. It sits above the fold when you're on your phone. And when you do the visit now, you went to Trailfinders because they wanted to measure the response. Trailfinders, I don't know how many of you have ever bought holiday for Trailfinders, but you can't buy online. You have to go into the store to buy from them or over the phone. And the feedback that we got from Trailfinders was that for the first time in the history of Trailfinders, more people were looking at the Tennessee page than they were the Louisiana page. And they attributed that to this campaign that ran across the UK. And you can see on the right here the level of information we can get. It's a little bit like Big Brother. You can see what's happening around the country and where the hotspots are, and that can then inform what we might do in different parts of the country with different other media. So we might, for example, up in Leeds, switch on some buses, but we might focus primarily down in the southwest where the click-through rate is higher. So now we come on to TV. I don't know how many of you just watched the talk from Smokescreen. We love TV at Meerkat, and we do a lot more of it than we used to do. And the reason we as an agency do so much more TV now is because it's so much more accessible. In the olden days, when I started Meerkat, and we worked with Chestnut Tree House a lot, and they were always very keen to advertise on the TV. But in those olden days, they had to have advertised in the area that the mast tells them to advertise in. And Meridian, it's a huge area. It's massive. There's millions of people living in it. So linear is brilliant for mass reach, but the timing is fixed. You can't go exactly where you want to go. Now you trade in TVRs. I'm not going to go into the minutiae of this, but it's a very different way of trading. You trade basically on the basis of, if all these meerkats are watching Coronation Street, we're after women ABC1 45 plus, and 40% of those women of that audience are watching it. That's 40 TVRs, TV ratings. So if you've bought 100 ratings for a month, you do not want to gobble up all your ratings in one show, unless you've done a fixed spot, like what we did here for Silverstone. So this is a great example of linear TV campaign. It works brilliantly for events. If you're working around a specific event, and it's an event that people like me who've got no interest in F1 whatsoever isn't going to be watching, you go where the highlights are, you go where the event is. So this was a linear TV campaign. It was on Channel 4 and ITV. We bought it on the GP qualifiers, and then we bought it on ITV to target adults with families in the area of Silverstone. But it's trading on TVRs. So just hold that thought for one moment, because whilst it was highly targeted around the MotoGP, we still weren't able to work within exactly the area that Silverstone would love to have worked, because we're working with the mast. Don't take your eyes off the mast. The mast is where the transmission goes with linear TV. We can't change it. No one can change it, apart from the TV people. So this is the milestone. This is the really significant part of TV advertising. This is when things start to change. And suddenly, the advertisers who couldn't have afforded to go on linear, or had chosen not to go on linear because it would just have been too much wastage, suddenly they start to be able to decide where they want to go. So in terms of digital TV, it does vary according to what media owner we're talking to. They're not all the same. So when Casey, who's our head of planning, is planning for any one client, and we get given a target audience, it doesn't necessarily mean that that TV station can give us exactly what we want. We'll have to be as close as possible. So I'm going to show you two different case studies here. We've got Mackey's and Winnan Lake. So Mackey's ice cream. Do any of you know Mackey's ice cream? Okay, that's good. That's good. Be our TV campaign case. So Mackey's in Scotland is so well known, but our remit as their agency was to grow sales south of the border. That's what they came to us with. So this was part of an integrated campaign. In terms of what we did for them, we bought a digital TV campaign combined with a linear. And the idea behind this was we were going to test it. So there was a control region for ITVX, which is the digital, and that went across the UK, it went across England and Wales, with an area excluded where raspberry ripple ice cream was less available. That's how clever you can be when you've got stats that Mackey's ice cream had. To be done on Casey in particular, the more information a client has that they can give us, the more we can work with it. So this client was able to give us the information about the Raspberry Ripple product and where people could easily find it. So we ran digital TV across England and Wales, excluding that area, and then we tested linear. Not across the whole of England and Wales, because it would have cost so much money, but we tested it in an exposed region in Anglia, and then they were able to feed back. In terms of the target audience, it says adults, but actually Mackey's have got information that Tesco give them about a woman called Donna. A woman called Donna doesn't actually exist, but it's data that tells them about who this woman is that's the most likely person to buy Mackey's ice cream. So this programme select that you see here, that's ITV being able to advise us what programmes they think that target audience is most likely going to be watching. So it's a phenomenal way of being seen in programmes that if they were on linear, they probably wouldn't get seen, because it would be too expensive. And it was a 30-second advert. And the results were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. you can go and read a case study on ITV, and you can see for yourself that they were happy. They grew sales, brand awareness went up, and yeah, I mean, I think it's a statement in of itself that you can grow a 20% increase in product sales year on year, and it was a fairly modest spend. I'm not going to divulge what we did spend, but it's more modest than they probably realise. So, William Lake is the other case study I'm going to show you. So, have any of you heard of William Lake? Do any of you live up in Milton Keynes area? So, it's a big water park. It's fantastic. And our brief was to target people 30 miles drive time from that postcode. So, nice and targeted. And then we went to Sky, they to target differently, they work with Box. So ITV and Channel 4 work with postcodes, Sky work with a box. That's the difference. In terms of the audiences we were after, it was ABC went with kids, high affluence kids, and all adults. And here's the great thing. They were able to access through CTV or connected TV brands like Amazon Prime and Disney. Now, this was at a time when Amazon Prime and Disney hadn't introduced minimum spends. So just to touch very quickly on, at Meerkat, it's our job to be ahead of the curve. And we were way ahead of the curve when connected TV came out. And as such, a lot of our clients, including Lightning Fibre, invested in connected TV. But for both William Lake and Lightning Fibre, that wouldn't be possible now. The minimum spend is significant, but also it means that the areas that Lightning Fibre and William Lake want to focus on, there's not enough audience in there to be able to spend that money. So it wouldn't make any sense. But look at the shows you can get on with connected TV. It's kind of phenomenal what William Lake has seen on over the summer. And again, they didn't spend huge sums of money. We wouldn't be able to do that for them now, because in the time that ran, up until the time we're in today, these big brands have changed their minds about minimum spend. So they had it, but I don't think it's very likely it's going to happen again unless we reverse that. So moving on to radio. I do love radio. I used to work at a radio station, so I do love radio. It's broadcast to everyone who tunes in on FM and DAB. The targeting is based on environment, and the measurement is based on a very old-fashioned system called radar. I don't know if any of you have heard of radar, but it's a book. You can fill in a book. But it's been the industry standard system for, well, as long as I've been in media for, so over 30 years. So that's how it's done. You can see here this mass. Back to the antenna, where's the mass going? So Hart, Sussex, for example, there's a mast that sits on Brighton Race Course. And anyone who wants east or west Sussex has to really go across east and west, because the mast can't guarantee that you might be on one side or the other of Brighton. So it's quite prohibitive in terms of where you might want to be if you don't want to be in a defined area. And I'm going to play you something now. People will be wondering, in case you ask me this, why is there a bunty bin on your slide? Well, I'm going to play you the advert and I'll explain to you why there's a bunty bin.
It began 30 years ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
And this July, you're invited to the biggest birthday celebrations this side of Tatooine.
Star Wars Celebration Europe.
You can relive your favorite Star Wars moments, including life-size vehicles, actors and crew from all 6 movies. You can even meet Jabba the Hutt. Oh dear.
A Jedi training school near Liberty. Test your lightsaber skills. You will. Star Wars Celebration Europe, July 13th, 14th and 15th at Excel, London. Visit celebrationeurope.com or call 0870 060 0245. The force is strong, this one.
So, any Star Wars fans in this room? Perhaps not. The Brabantia bit is on there because we did the production. We did a lot of audio production and MEERKATworks. And we produced all of those adverts in a studio in our radio station in London with a guy, I'm sure you all know, John Coltrane, the impersonator. And a lot of those sounds that you hear on that advert, that Brabantia bit. He was breathing down it. He was, there was a lot of things he was doing that variety of being to impersonate one of those sounds. So the variety of being always reminded me of and Star Wars. But to go back to the print advert I showed you earlier, it was a campaign that was out of home, audio, and also print. That's the audio version of it. So that was before the milestone, which is the geo-targeting. So to go back to the lovely map that we've got here, the geo-targeting has made all the difference to what we do at MEERKAT, because it means that things are so much more accessible. So we've got 2 case studies here. I'm going to play you this one. So Universal Orlando Resort, even though they've obviously got a huge amount of money, they don't want to waste it. They're like any advertiser. Why would you want to waste it money? And so our remit here was to drive people to travel bag, send people into travel bag stores. So to give some context to this, there's a travel bag on Baker Street in London. In the olden days, when I first started MEERKAT, when I worked in radio, you'd have had to have advertised on London radio. And even if on the smallest London radio station, you'd have to spend a minimum £10,000. And your advert would have gone out beyond Zone 6 to an audience of over 60 million people. That's how many people have lived in the FM version of one of these radio stations that you can see here. Digital audio, you were able to pinpoint where the travel bag stores are and work within a parameter of that. So all these parameters you see at the bottom, suddenly any advertiser who wants to be on either DAX, which is the global brands, or EMAC, which is the Magic and Kiss, etc., can be in the area that they want to be. Just play you. This is actually me at Universal.
Are you ready to unleash your inner child? Cause mischief with the minions. Ride Hagrid's Magical Creatures motorbike adventure in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. It's time to plan your dream getaway to Universal Orlando Resort. Travelback's new flexible booking policy means that if your plans change, your holiday could too. Book your Universal Orlando holiday at your local Travelbag store on Baker Street or at travelbag.co.uk. Conditions apply.
So they're hedging their bets there now. We did the creative, we've got to get all the licensing, and they're driving people. So there was different tags on these radio adverts that drove people to the travel bag stores around the UK, stores online. Yeah. And this is the other example we've got for you. This is podcast advertising. We do a lot of podcast advertising now. Casey's podcast, but that's it. We've nailed it. This is an example of a campaign that we bought for Bloomberg Next, our client. It's a philanthropy arm of Bloomberg. And this was a campaign that we ran in Edinburgh, across digital audio and out of home. I'll play this.
Who painted that? What's that made of? Why is that one maroon?
Get all your arts and culture questions answered with the free Bloomberg Connects app. With behind-the-scenes guides and expert-curated video and audio content, Bloomberg Connects makes it easy to learn about hundreds of galleries, museums and cultural spaces around the world. Download Bloomberg Connects, the free arts and culture app, available on your app store.
That's a podcast advert going out to people just in the area of Edinburgh entering at the time the festival's on. Highly targeted. And then just very quickly, I'm going to finish on out of home. We've got an awful lot of out of home. I think it's probably, if you were to ask all our clients what's your favourite media, a lot of them would say out of home. And it reaches people when they're out and about. It's brilliant. It can be very cost prohibitive. I'd laugh when I saw this example of the Sky Sea campaign that we bought back in 2009 outside Brighton Station, when taxis used to go in and out of Brighton Station. But this is a static site. But the advantage of a static site is you're not competing with anybody. That was there for a month. No one got in the way of it. Brilliant thing about digital billboards are you can share the screen. You can change the copy. So digital billboards were first introduced in 2002. This one that we bought for Turkish Airlines was 2008. It was just in the middle of London. And the interesting thing is that static has remained really strong. We buy a lot of static out of home now. That's traditional printed static out of home. But we also buy programmatic out of home. So this one on the left is Nassau. This one in London. This was switched on when it rained and the temperature dropped below, I think, to 12 degrees AC. And this one over here is Maggie's. That's switched on outside of Sainsbury's stores with it when the temperature went above 25 degrees. That's problematic out of home. And this is two different examples of what we're currently running the Bloomberg or London Underground. Highly targeted in the areas where they have their arts and cultural partners. So you'll see these around Victoria and Bank Warrington presence. And these are called digital 48 shoots. But this is a great example of an out-of-home campaign where you're utilising static with digital. It doesn't have to all be about digital. And just to finish, really, I mean, I kind of really got my last slide, but then I realised that actually what we do at MEERKATworks is we're conductors, we orchestrate the brief, and we create something brilliant with it. We do with control, precision. We don't really get any done notes, which we want to do. We can take the time to do what we do. But as you can see here, it's random in the sense that we don't quite know what brief we're going to get in. From week to week, we will get different briefs, and every single plan that we work on for our clients is bespoke. It's very important to point that out, because to go back just being independent, we have absolutely no commercial access to Brian whatsoever. If you were to give us a brief, and we thought that Channel 4 might be better than Sky, or Out of Home might be better than radio, we would advise you to do that. And I think it's a very important thing for you to know. But the fact is that digital has revolutionised my day-to-day and Casey's day-to-day lives as media planner buyers. And I think probably if I had to summarise it in one sentence, I'd say it's because it's made it so much more accessible to people. If you told me when I was working in London at Kiss and Magic that in 20 years' time you put your fridge on and you'd speak to a radio station, come on if you wanted to, and hear an advert, I said no way. But actually, the reality is, if we buy a digital audio campaign for you, somebody can walk into their kitchen and say, Alexa, switch on LBC. And if we are in that area with your message, and you want to target that person, your advert will come out of the fridge that Alexa's sitting on. That's kind of clever, really. It's taken us quite a long time, but a short time to get there. That's how I would describe it. So I think, is that 5 minutes for questions?
Absolute perfection. If anyone has any questions, now is your time. I will be here most of the day, same as Casey. So, but does anyone have any questions I'd like to ask? Oh, we've got two.
Okay.
No question, I've had one.
Yeah, no, go on. Casey can answer as well if you want to, Casey. Let's see.
Question I'd throw out open is just watching this and seeing how the channels have changed over the years. What's the extension of this? Where are we going now with the targeting of people? Because obviously it's got narrow, it's got more geo-active, it's targeting right ABCs and all that. Those are all terms we're familiar with.
Yeah.
But where's it going next?
It's a very good question. Yeah, it is a very, very good question, because we can only work with what the media owners are able to give us in terms of the data that we get given. And Casey, you might want to answer that.
Yeah. I think it's still early days on a lot of the platforms. So, for example, CTV, if we buy a campaign, it's a bit of a black box. You put your budget in, you know roughly what channels it's going on, but they can't really report on where it's going. So I think the next step, the immediate next steps, is the reporting on some of these newer digital channels, catching up to what you can get on it or what you can get with programming. So I think there's still a bit of catch up to go before we kind of think go to the next phase. The next phase is anyone's best, really. It's exciting times.
But I'm just wondering about the juxtaposition of this and big data.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we find increasingly as an independent agency is we get approached by other agencies who are telling us, you don't speak to rights people, we'll just do it all for you. And they'll show us these really fancy slides. Our expression is they're all fur coat and no knickers, because they have all of these amazing brands on, but they're not backed up with data. You know, when we start to really drill down and we say, well, we can get that from ITV, or we can get that geo box from Sky, or we can put that programmatic out-of-home campaign on outside Waitrose. What's the difference? They can often, they're like rabbits in the headlights. So I think it's opening up a world where cowboys can operate massively. And, Yeah, I think so long as we have the confidence to know that we are working with the media owners that we trust, we won't go wrong. But I think it's when new suppliers come around and promise us the world, and we nitpick. I mean, I've seen Casey just literally get people tied in knots who are presenting a super sexy deck, and they just don't understand what's on it because they're hiding behind this data promise that they can't fulfil. And yeah, I mean, has that answered your question? I suppose.
I'm just I'm curious.
Yeah,
It's just bound to be a space where they would like to operate.
Yeah, I think we have become increasingly consumed almost with making sure that we operate with due diligence, which is why, we want to be able to look any of our clients in the eye and tell them that we're doing our best. As far as we know, this media owner is reputable. And I think so long as we continue to do that, we won't go wrong. But I think we're entering a dangerous world. So, yeah. Did you have a question?
About the programmatics that
Yeah.
you asked me earlier on, two questions really. The first would be is just how accurate is it able to target key avatar, things like that?
Yeah.
And the second part, well, for me, my whole market is in Hong Kong. And so I was just wondering, is it equally accurate everywhere around the world, or are there regional variations? Is it done different ways in different parts of the world?
After all the talking case.
Yeah, different markets have different regulations, even between the UK and Germany. They have different data protection regulations based on country. What was the first question? It was
the degree of accuracy.
Yeah, the targeting. I think if anyone tells it's 100% they're lying. I think if they say it's 90% they're also lying. I think there's going to be grey areas, but compared to other advertising platforms, it is one of the most targeted, because if you think of the amount of data that you share every day with your technology, it's building up a pretty good profile of you. So it's highly targeted, but probably not what the fancy slides say.
So I mean, would it be able to get down to, for example, how old are children? Right.
So even on TV channels, you could target families with children between 0 and 12 years old, or 1 and 12, 1 and 12. So there is, again, the data that your technology is collecting, not down to an exact age, but there are different brackets that we can target, even on radio as well, digital radio, we can target certain family audiences. So it's all moving, it's almost like radio and TV and out of home, all playing catch up to make programmatic is. I think programmatic just keeps fine tuning it as it goes along.
And the reporting is a big key part of it. We do every quarter we do due diligence and make sure that we're working with what we consider to be the best in the business for our programmatic ad ops department. And the reporting is second to none. It's like meta reporting on steroids. And on occasion we have, for example, that Tennessee advert I showed to you. Click-through rate was so high that our ad ops team said that can't be right. Tennessee's an interesting place to go to. There's no way that many people are clicking on that. That is due diligence and an ad ops team who are actually keeping an eye on something, as opposed to us going, oh, look at your Tennessee report, isn't it great? Because if we know that probably isn't true, then it would be wrong of us to present that. So it isn't quite a battle to keep on top of it, but as each week goes by, we get better at it. Because we're very well known for our questions, and we like to ask those questions. Which puts a lot of people off and on the back foot, but hey.
We love questions. Thank you very much. It's been amazing to see the transition from, I don't know about everyone else, but how much media marketing transitioned over 20 years.